that. I don't know what I did with it. I'll find it. Anyway, so on your website, Brian, you do a blog, and the blog is very, very popular. There's quite a few. You get quite a few hits, and I know that you had done a story about me a long time ago about cell towers and cell tower experts. And I get repeated calls from that, which I really appreciate. But tell us about your company and the kind of work that you do.
Sure. So I've been an investigator for about 15 years now. I started in my father's business, and about 9 years ago, 2 days ago actually, I broke off and went out on my own. So for the past 15 years, I mean, I kind of grew up in sort of the digital age. So my investigation was initially sort of focused on sort of disability investigation, insurance-related investigation. And as times have changed, so has sort of my skill sets. And I've kind of gone from initially started doing surveillance and kind of the normal things you think about doing private investigative work. And I've kind of gone on to other avenues where, you know, helping on legal matters, doing due diligence investigations. So anyway, it's been sort of an interesting ride, and I kind of grew up in an interesting age in this business where a lot of information was coming online and kind of changed the whole business. And growing up, you know, I'm sure you didn't grow up with a computer in your hand, Scott.
No.
You've got a few years on me. But so I grew up in the sort of computer age, and that's kind of a lot of the stuff that I focused on. I do a lot of interviews as well. So, you know, that's kind of been the peaks and valleys of what I've been doing.
You also, on your website, and I'm not familiar with this, and I had a sort of an ongoing disagreement with somebody. There was a private investigator that was involved in a case that I was involved in that had this alphabet soup behind her name. And you have the same thing. You have CFE. What does CFE mean?
It's a certified fraud examiner. The Association of Certified Fraud Examiners is one of the oldest organizations in the country. You know, they focus on fraud, and over the years they've changed quite a bit, but it's probably the most, you know, significant association out there for the investigative community. Over the years, they've kind of strayed away from people like me, private investigators, and gone into more internal compliance kind of stuff, internal auditing and those kind of things. But you know, it's certainly, it's a recognizable name, and it's certainly, you know, of all the, I'm not a big fan of people having an infinite amount of letters behind their name. I think it's just masking some sort of insecurity. But the Certified Fraud Examiner has actually been a really good organization. I've spoken at their conference, and I go there every couple of years. So it's been a good organization to be part of.
Yeah, this person that I had the conversation with had I don't know, certified criminal investigator, CCI, something like that. I looked it up, and I was a little disappointed because, number one, when they say certified, when I ultimately did have a conversation with her, and I'm not going to use her name, but I said, I don't really understand this alphabet soup behind your name, because, you know, who's certifying you? And so now, if I've been doing this, and like you said, I've been doing this a lot longer than you, 40 years. And so for 40 years, I've done, I don't know, hundreds of trials. Couldn't tell you how many thousands of cases. And the fact is, I'm thinking to myself, well, who's the person certifying me? If I were to go and get this, what qualifications do they have to do this certification? One of the things that you just said that was interesting, we were talking about surveillance, and that sort of perpetuated this entire conversation, that a friend of mine injured himself at work. He's already had one surgery scheduled for the second surgery, and I had to go someplace. And I asked him to keep me company, and we were followed by a young lady. And again, in California, now I get you're in New York, but when you're doing that type of surveillance and you're following people, does it actually qualify as time toward a license? Because I don't believe in California that it does.
I believe it does. I mean, there's a certain amount of qualified experience that you need to have, and certainly police officers and federal law enforcement officers get that sort of experience. But for people like me who were never in law enforcement, you need some sort of investigative, you know, experience in order to qualify for a license. I believe it does. I honestly don't know the exact answer for that. I'd be interested to hear what other states are like, but
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how that works. And just getting back to the sort of the letters behind your name question that you were bringing up before, I agree. I think it's fascinating. You know, when I do a lot of due diligence, and I've done extensive background checks on expert witnesses, quote unquote expert witnesses who have all these designations behind them. And most of these organizations are literally, you pay a fee and they give you this designation. And that's one of the things that, and if I'm doing a case where I'm trying to dig up anything I can on an expert witness, we're trying to disqualify them as an expert. And if you're just paying for a membership, that doesn't mean anything at all. The reason why the certified fraud examiners is, I think, a good, high-quality organization is they require, 20 hours a year of training. They take an extensive test. I did 3 days of training for the test, 3 straight days of taking a course. And so they require a lot of sort of ongoing sort of experience with doing this kind of stuff. So it actually means something, as opposed to a lot of these other sort of names that they have, or letters you have behind your name.
Yeah, and again, a couple of other things that you mentioned. Number one, in California, just being a police officer doesn't qualify you to get a license as an investigator, because being a police officer doesn't mean that you've conducted an investigation. If you're working traffic for 10 years, I know of people who have tried to get a license and have failed the test that were police officers, or have been told they don't qualify simply by being a police officer. It's not that simple. The other issue is, like I said, with this certification, I had asked this gal if I could get a copy of the test. I'd like to see it. I'd like to know what questions are on it. And of course, they claim proprietary information, and they weren't going to show me a copy of it. And then I said, so who are the people that are reviewing this or prepared this? And she said, they have 20, 25 years of experience. And I said, well, I have 40. So, I mean, what does that mean exactly? How all of a sudden do these people become more qualified? Or what puts them in a position to make that determination? And like you said, you pay for it. I think they wanted $175. And I'm thinking, so wait a minute, why can't I just certify myself?
Right.
Why can't I just put certified criminal, whatever? I think it was CCDI, Certified Criminal Defense Investigator. There's a couple of these. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm certifiable, but why can't I just put certified behind my name?
You're certifiable in other ways.
Many, many other ways. Again, the issue being is, why do I need their validation? Or, interestingly too, I got a copy of, you can study and get sample copies of the tests. And in California, there are actually a couple questions. I sadly only remember one, but there are a couple questions on the test for a PI license that are flat out wrong. They're just wrong. The answer, that one of the question was, what do you do if you have to serve somebody in London? And the bottom line is, you can't do anything, because it's outside the jurisdiction of the United States, and you can't serve somebody in London for an order to appear, or, frankly, anything else. That's not how it works. So we're going to come back. The call-in number is area 818-850-7784. Anybody that would like to call in, Brian and I are both going to be on the line for the entire hour. But we do need to take a quick break right now. We'll be back. Brian, stay with us if you would. And I'll see you in a few.
DC Talk Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM.
Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you always tired and worn out? Is it affecting your work and personal life? Well, South Pacific Sleep Lab can help you out. South Pacific Sleep Lab provides a personal study of your sleep patterns. With their trained specialists, they will diagnose your sleep habits and will give you a prognosis for getting a great, relaxing night of sleep. South Pacific Sleep Lab has locations throughout Southern California, including Fontana, and will provide transportation to any of their locations at no cost to you. To find out more, give them a call at 844-SAD-5050. That's 844-SAD-5050. South Pacific Sleep Lab. Start resting easy and sleeping sound today.
Hi, my name is Phil Grandy, philsgang.com. Most people would love to be in the stock market, but they're scared not being in, they're scared about not getting out in time. Well, that is over because now you can join Phil's gang and my stock video program and follow me with specific stock on the video, and you will be out in time.
Find out more at philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG. That's 877-600-4264. Why pay thousands of dollars for a weekend seminar when for only $39.95 a month? philsgang.com provides all the daily market investing information you need to make profits in the stock market. With over 40 years of investing experience, only Phil Grandy and the philsgang.com team provide daily live investing webinars, up-to-the-minute market updates, all the investing educational videos you can imagine. Don't hesitate to learn, invest, and make profits. Go to philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG, 877-600-4264.
Bye-bye, sailor. No more sailing. Bye-bye.
Okay, we're back. Again, the call-in number is area 818-850-7784. We were on with Brian Willingham. You seem to have found a major, and if I'm wrong, tell me, but you seem to have found a major niche in background and research. In fact, I've always been very impressed by the backgrounds that you've done, and I know that you tend, and I really hate the expression dig. I'm not a gardener, and I really hate when people say you dig up dirt. But the short version is that I know that you've really excelled at that. And is that just an issue of putting in time, or is it an understanding of social media, or, I mean, how did you sort of get into that?
It's a really good question. I think it's just how the business has sort of developed, and it definitely is a niche. And there's not enough people out there that do this kind of stuff. And it's really just a matter of putting in the time. There's no handbooks for doing this kind of stuff, as you know.
Well, go ahead. But I was going to say that actually brings us to the next question that you and I, admittedly, we had a little while ago. What do you think is the most important factor when you're dealing with something? When somebody wants to be a private investigator, what to you in your work? What is the most important requirement? I guess I would say.
It's interesting. You know, you don't think about this often because you're so involved in sort of your day-to-day work that you don't think about what those real qualities are. And recently I've had the opportunity of training somebody new in this business. And there's a lot of qualities I think are critically important. Some of them that are not absolutely necessary, like organizational skills and patience and understanding the limitations of sort of what you can and can't do, which I think is a really big one.
Yeah, because I have no organizational skills and no patience.
I've seen your office, so I know exactly what you're talking about. But I think the biggest one for me, and I think that one sort of skill set that you absolutely have to have is persistence. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, I think there's this sort of false impression that, you know, people watch too much TV and people call me all the time and say, hey, can't you just go and break into somebody's office and grab their tax records and show me what they made last year? And there's, you know, when you're watching these television shows or whatever the case may be, or movies, things happen very quickly, and certainly in today's day and age where there's this immediate sense of you need answers, that just doesn't happen in real life. It requires an immense amount of digging, persistence, and patience, and you will maybe eventually find that needle in that haystack, but it requires putting in the work. And that's one of the qualities that I think has sort of set me apart from others, is that I have absolutely no shame in putting in just insane amounts of hours on something, to the detriment of my well-being and my family's well-being. And you just have to put in the work. And I don't think there's any industry where it's easy, so to speak, but you got to put in the work, and you have to be persistent and keep going after it and readdress it and keep going.
See, we have a different spin, because my comment would be, I think somebody's calling in and Gary stepped out. My comment would be not as much persistence, but common sense. And I have dealt with people year after year after year and tried to teach people and tried to work with people. And when all is said and done, the issue is, I agree with the persistence, but if you get stuck and you don't know where to go, if you don't have that common sense to take yourself to the next level, to another portion, then the bottom line is it's all for nothing. And that's why I didn't want to give you my response. But my response is common sense. And again, a lot of really intelligent people that I've worked with, and some lawyers, great lawyers that I've worked with, they know the law, they know their job, they know how to ask questions, they know how to prepare cases, but they don't really have a lot of common sense. If you're standing in front of 3 elevators and you push a button and you put your nose right up against the door waiting for one to open, you don't see the other one open. You have to push the button and step back. It's basic common sense. And I know it sounds sort of ridiculous, but I see it all the time. So the persistence is interesting. So again, anyway, somebody's calling in. Whoever's calling, keep calling. Gary. Somebody's trying to call in. I can hear the thing. But that's the key issue that I have always felt was simply that. I'm sorry?
He's trying to call in.
Oh. So anyway, in your training, though, I know you've hired this new individual. How long do you think it'll train to get to your level? I know it takes years, but well, okay. So that he can be on his own.
It's interesting because we have this question all the time, and we're constantly, going back and forth about how long is it going to take me to do this. And I don't know if he's ever going to sort of catch up to me, honestly, because I keep learning as things go on. And it just takes time and effort. I would say it takes a good, 2 to 3 years of solid doing this work all the time. And whatever niche that is, the niche that you're in is completely a different world than what I'm in. And, some of the work that we're doing now, we're doing some due diligence for a major bank and looking into an investor.
I don't mean to interrupt, but you use the term due diligence.
I'm just trying to call in. I hope we don't lose the call.
Oh, I think we've got a caller coming in.
We might lose this call. He might drop out, so we'll see.
Okay, we'll give it a shot.
Yeah, he dropped out.
Oh, Brian, did we lose you? Yep. What I was saying is you keep using the term.
You got a caller in there now.
Oh, go ahead, caller. You there?
Go ahead, caller. Here. Go ahead. Ask the question.
Is it okay? This is Jason. I'm a private investigator down in Texas. I was interested in Brian's comments and Scott's comments about due diligence investigation.
We lost Brian. He's going to have to call back, unfortunately. I actually wanted him to explain due diligence because, again, it's a conversation. It's a topic that we understand. How long have you been licensed out of Texas?
How long have you been licensed out of Texas?
Can you not hear me?
About 4 years. I can't hear Scott if he's talking.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
When
4 on my own, 6 total.
6. Okay. And what kind of investigation do you do?
Criminal defense, family law, some insurance. We routinely field those phone calls from people that say that they want FBI background checks. And like Brian said, people watch too much TV.
Right.
So, we talk about what that entails. If they really want FBI background checks, are they asking us to go interview neighbors of their, their childhood home and teachers from elementary school and things like that? And that's never really what they mean. So, I was just curious how Brian and Scott, how you all handle those kinds of pushbacks when a true deep due diligence, background check on somebody can easily run into the thousands of dollars if it's done right. But that's rarely what people ask for.
Well, and I can tell you again, Jason, I do almost exclusively criminal defense. And the bottom line is that an FBI background check on somebody in a criminal defense matter is probably never going to come into court, so it's kind of a waste of time. That's more of a civil issue, more of even maybe a family law issue, I would imagine. Again, I don't really do that, so I don't have a lot of experience in that. So my question would be, when you're doing that type of an in-depth background, my question for you, when you're doing that type of an in-depth background investigation in Texas, what what type of case are you doing that on? Because again, I would think in a criminal, 90% of that information is irrelevant. Convicted felons are witnesses all the time.
Correct. And so a lot of times when we're fielding those questions to do background checks on people, it's not for criminal cases. It's some sort of business deal. It's a merger. It's people, investor groups wanting some due diligence on people, or maybe it's a corporate hire, somebody being promoted into or hired in for an executive level position. And I think a lot of those people that call they say, well, they think, they can just, they know they want something different than just an online type, $100 background check. But when we really start digging into it, and when we start kind of peeling back the onion, they're troubled by what they're really asking for.
So when you're doing something like that is a background for an employment type of situation, do you have to do that with authorization there?
If it's for pre-employment, yes, sir.
You do. Okay. And so when you, with the pre-employment screen, is that Brian trying to call back?
I don't know.
No. The pre-employment screen, when you're doing that and you get authorization, do you inform these people that you may go out and, again, if it's extensive, that you may go out and talk to former neighbors, or, again, I know you can go online and run like an address history. Do you tell them what you're going to do, or you just basically go ahead and do it?
Yes, sir. We tell them what we're going to do. Usually we're at that point in the conversation, we're still talking with the hiring agency or the manager, and I'm really kind of pushing back of trying to address their needs for a due diligence and a true background investigation on a potential executive.
Yeah.
But they, when we start asking those kind of questions and they start seeing what is entailed, it's kind of not what they want. I guess my questions for you all was, how do you field those objections, or how, when somebody says, well, I don't want to spend $1,000 to learn this. Well, it could take 8 to 10 hours just to do, even a cursory background investigation of making phone calls and, verifying information. So it's more of just a managing expectations for the client.
Do they give you a time frame? Do they give you a time frame in which they need to get the information?
Well, sure, right. Yesterday is fine, but tomorrow is okay too. And they want it instant, and they want it deep, and they want, going back 20 years of history, and it's just there's just a lot of misconceptions, I think, on what we do. But I was curious how you handle some of those unrealistic expectations.
Again, I have criminal defense. You're sort of on a calendar. I mean, the defendant is the only one that can waive time, and you're on a calendar. And I try not to overbook, so I tend to maybe handle only a few cases at a time. So I really don't run into those time frame issues. Again, I at least do everything I can not to. So listen, Jason, what's the name of your company?
Cornerstone Intelligence in Waco, Texas.
In Waco, Texas? Okay. Brian is going to be calling back. Unfortunately, my fault. The system is not doing both. So I'm going to have Brian call back, try and get to your questions. But right now we have to take a break. Listening to All Things P.I. with Scott Ross. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
NBC Talk Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM.
Hi, my name is Phil Grandy, philsgang.com. Most people would love to be in the stock market, but they're scared not being in. They're scared about not getting out in time. Well, that is over, because now you can join Phil's Gang and my stock video program and follow me with specific stock on the video, and you will be out in time.
Find out more at philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG. That's 877-600-4264. Why pay thousands of dollars for a weekend seminar when for only $39.95 a month, philsgang.com provides all the daily market investing information you need to make profits in the stock market. With over 40 years of investing experience, only Phil Grandy and the philsgang.com team provide daily live investing webinars, up-to-the-minute market updates, all the investing educational videos you can imagine. Don't hesitate to learn, invest, and make profits. Go to philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG, 877-600-4264.
Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you always tired and worn out? Is it affecting your work and personal life? Well, South Pacific Sleep Lab can help you out. South Pacific Sleep Lab provides a personal study of your sleep patterns. With their trained specialists, they will diagnose your sleep habits and will give you a prognosis for getting a great relaxing night of sleep. South Pacific Sleep Lab has locations throughout Southern California, including Fontana, and will provide transportation to any of their locations at no cost to you. To find out more, give them a call at 844-SAD-5050. That's 844-SAD-5050. South Pacific Sleep Lab. Start resting easy and sleeping sound today.
Hey, Brian, you back with us?
I'm back.
Okay. So I don't know if you got a chance to listen to what Jason was saying. It was kind of interesting because, again, with doing like pre-employment background screens, I know in California, and again, I can only speak for California, you get permission, but I don't know the extent of that permission. So you were talking about due diligence, and you were talking about due diligence with experts. Could you sort of explain to the audience what due diligence means? Because, again, it's a term that we throw around all the time, but it doesn't mean that the world knows what that means. So it's all yours.
So listen, due diligence at the core is kind of doing the homework on whatever party that you're getting involved with. So, I mean, due diligence and a background investigation, I kind of throw around hand in hand. And due diligence is typically used in sort of the investment world where, you know, a business may be about to contribute tens of millions of dollars into a company, and they want to make sure that the company and its principals are on the up and up, that they don't have a bunch of axe murderers or fraudsters running the company. So in that sense, that's typically how it's used. And one of the things you guys talked about when I jumped off there is the whole idea of this FBI background check. And one of the things that I wrote about in my blog, which you're so kind enough to plug, was a background check that the FBI did on Steve Jobs many years ago when he was going to be appointed to some sort of cabinet position, I think, under the Bush or Reagan administration.
Oh, really?
And they released his background check. And what the fascinating thing about it is, it's 95% of it is reviewing public records. They would send people down to the courthouses. They would talk to people who, he's worked with before. They were checking his criminal history, his civil history, reviewing court documents, seeing if, reviewing every single news article about him. And it was just absolutely fascinating. So the idea that the FBI has this sort of magic database where they can look up somebody's name and have a complete dossier on everything that they've ever done is a little bit ridiculous. I mean, there's certainly things that the FBI has access to that you and I can only dream about, or potentially, have access to, whether it's emails or phones or whatever kind of secret intel database that they might have. But 90% of this background investigation that they did on Steve Jobs entailed looking through public records, which is anything that you and I or anybody else can do. And it's not all that different. And the general public can do. It's just a matter of having sort of the wherewithal and the tools necessary to do that.
Yeah, the FBI just really has access to things like NCII, which is just the National Criminal Information Index. And anytime that somebody is booked, interestingly too, and I'm sorry we don't have Jason, but in the criminal arena, it's not the same thing, because the bottom line is when I'm doing a background on somebody, if somebody's going to testify, the prosecution has a duty in California, and again, I can only speak for California, they have a duty to turn over anything that would qualify as moral turpitude. So, again, if somebody had a DUI, it's not something that's going to come in or is going to be an issue. If somebody had got a ticket for walking their dog off leash, it's not an issue of moral turpitude. If somebody had committed a burglary or somebody had committed a violent crime, all of that is something that gets turned over to us in discovery if they are going to call them as a witness. And independent of that, if we're going to call somebody as a witness, we have a duty to turn over our information and witness list to the prosecution, and they're going to do their own background anyway. Anything that they find, they're going to turn over to us. So again, unless we're trying to actually develop something in the criminal arena, all of that work is sort of handed to you. And, again, information that you're going to be able to get in. So that's something that is really more your territory.
Right.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I mean, and this is more of a question for you. The reality is, how do you know that information is complete? I mean, what are they going off of? Are they going off of whatever, NCISS or some other database that they've looked into? And the reality is that there's hundreds, if not millions, of data points that you can search into a person's career that may not be in whatever they're handing over to you. And there's certainly cases I've found expert witnesses who have, they're required to disclose all this information about lawsuits they've been involved with, and they just don't disclose it.
And
so there's situations there where, they just may not be fully disclosed, and you may find something that may be, that may be really valuable evidence.
And let's move to expert witnesses, because that brings up a whole other topic. And based on your recommendation, and I want everyone to know that, I watched the Netflix version of The Staircase and subsequently had David Rudolph actually on the show last week. And The Staircase, part of the reversal of the decision in the murder of Michael Peterson's murder conviction in North Carolina was based on the misrepresentations of the State Bureau of Investigation investigator who falsified his experience, who misrepresented his experience. So I don't know if that, under normal circumstances, I mean, part of the problem is that he already testified. So he gets up and he testifies and he says, I've worked on 200 cases, when clearly he had not, and that was also part of the show, The Staircase. And so the next issue is, would you have access to something like that? Because I don't believe in the state of California. I don't know if I could subpoena those records to predetermine. And if you do subpoena the records, the bottom line is, okay, so I go to the State Bureau of Investigation and I say, I want to know all the cases this individual has worked on or testified on. And I can tell you that the LA DA, Los Angeles County DA's office, does maintain those types of records anytime anybody's testified or even been subpoenaed. But the fact is that this guy was able to get up there and testify and misrepresent. So since it's sort of in the progress and process of the trial, how do you go about getting that information beforehand? Because you don't know what this guy's going to say. And if this is a legitimate question, you want to get up there and say, how many cases have you worked on? If he wants to get up and misrepresent, how would you even know before the fact?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And those are the things that are very difficult. Finding people, determining where and when people testify in cases is not a simple task. And no, in certain cases, it can be plowing through hundreds of court records and those kind of things. The way that I always approach these things is I'm focusing on the things that I can control and understanding sort of the limitations of what I can do. So for an expert, if they are in their dossier or in their LinkedIn profile, or whatever they publish, their resume, their CV, I'm trying to find anything in there that I can poke a hole. If they've said that they authored 200 articles and I can only find 6 that they ever did, or they said they were in the Journal of Medicine and I can't find they were in the Journal of Medicine, right. Or if they graduated from the school, they have a PhD from the school, those are things that I can control. Those are things that I can research and verify and fact check. At the end of the day, we're fact finders, and that's what we do. So I tend to take sort of the easier route. And you have no idea what you're going to say, and you're absolutely right. And there are times during a case, I imagine, that you can scramble and try to verify that information that might be sort of easier and simpler. But it's much easier to take what they have and try to poke holes in it, rather than to just willy-nilly trying to he had mentioned that he had testified in 200 cases, and that would have been nearly impossible to come up with. But they ultimately did were able to find that information.
Yeah, that gentleman's name was Dwayne Deaver, and apparently he was fired. He sued. He did get a settlement from the state, but he is no longer with the Bureau. And apparently other people sort of had the same reaction, and other cases had been reversed because of this guy. We've got somebody calling in. Brian, I want you to call back because I want to take the caller and see who it is. Sorry, we'll get it fixed. Okay. Hi, caller, you there? Hello?
Caller, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Hello, this is Hal Humphreys.
Hi, Hal. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you today?
I have no complaints other than it's hot outside. Where are you calling from, Hal?
I'm calling from Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay. You're a private investigator?
I am.
Okay. What kind of stuff do you do?
I'm a criminal defense investigator.
Oh, okay. Good. All right. So I can relate to that. You know, it's interesting. My relationship with Brian, you know Brian, correct?
I do.
Yeah. And my relationship with him started when I was, again, trying to do backgrounds and trying to get some information and taking advantage of his expertise because, again, there's in the criminal defense arena, and again, I don't know Tennessee. Do you know if it's the same as California? Have you ever worked out here? Because I've never worked in Tennessee.
I have not worked in California. I do a lot of work in Tennessee and Texas. I'm licensed in both those states.
I got licensed in Pennsylvania when we did Bill Cosby, only so I could sit with the attorneys. I had not, you know, again, I've never done a case in Philadelphia. I have been to Tennessee where I've done some interviews. In fact, on Robert Blake, that's a whole other subject. We were out in Memphis doing some interviews and nosing around, but they have reciprocal enforcement, so you can go into other states and do this. But in Tennessee, when you're doing a background, what kind of backgrounds and what kind of stuff do you guys do?
Well, most of the backgrounds we do end up being for criminal cases, and we deal a lot of times with expert witnesses. And that's the reason I called. I know you guys were talking about the staircase, and I was wondering if you had a chance to see Making a Murderer as well.
I have heard about it, but personally, I have not seen it. I don't know.
Okay.
I think Brian may have. I think he had told me that, but no, I haven't. Yeah, seen that.
There's an investigator who makes an appearance in that show. His name is Mike O'Kelly, and there have been a number of people who have commented about his performance in that episode, where he puts his defendant down and hands him a piece of paper that says he's got two boxes to check. One of them is, I'm sorry for what I did. The other one is, I'm not sorry for what I did. And those are the only two options. And this is the kid's criminal defense investigator.
That's ridiculous.
I had an occasion to work with that fellow one time, and his expert witness CV had, y'all were talking earlier in the show about the alphabet soup issue.
That's what I call it, yeah.
He had so many areas of expertise that I think at one point during the trial, the prosecutor asked him, he said, you know, how many things are you an expert in? And he told him, he said, let me ask you this, which one pays the best?
Really? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, I've done so much pro bono work, I couldn't even begin to tell you. It's absurd, the amount of time that I've never been paid for, never will get paid for. When, what's this guy's name, Mike O'Telly? What state is he out of?
I don't know where he is these days. The only reason I remember his name is he was on the show Making a Murderer. And going back to the background investigation thing, I too lean heavily on Brian when I need advice on background investigations.
So do I.
And he's a fantastic resource. And, you know, when we're doing backgrounds on expert witnesses, one of the things that I find really interesting is the number of times they don't disclose, you know, regulatory actions or lawsuits that they're involved in, where they're being sued by somebody and stuff like that. And it's all of this stuff ends up being some form or fashion public record, and anybody can find it if they're just willing to dig hard enough.
Right. Unfortunately, a lot of the places, I know Texas, I can't speak for Tennessee. Texas has a lot of computer access for the public. So I know that it's probably a little bit easier to do backgrounds as far as civil indexes and criminal indexes in the state of Texas. There's all these online services that you can get, but you have to have a PI license to gain access to them. The criminal issues that I have out of Tennessee, my question for you is this alphabet soup thing. How exactly are you involved in any of that? Are you familiar with these companies that put these things out there?
I am not. Are you talking about the CDI or Certified
exactly.
Criminal Defense Investigator?
Right. And
designations?
CCLI, Certified Criminal Licensed Investigator, Certified Defense Investigator. Again, I think I found the company. I was just curious, and one of the companies that I saw was, I believe, in North Carolina. And again, it's just a matter of sending them money. I think it's $175. I don't know why I can't just put it behind my name. They certainly don't own the letters.
Here's the thing, I'm like Brian, I'm a certified fraud examiner. I like that organization for very specific reasons. They actually have a fairly onerous process to become certified. But I don't particularly like having a bunch of letters behind my name, just because I think Brian said earlier, it shows a massive insecurity to have that many letters behind your name. And number two, for criminal defense work, I've never in the entirety of my career had a lawyer ask me if I was certified to do this work. It ends up being a lot of word of mouth referral. And if you are a competent and curious investigator and will get out there and do the work, and as Brian says, just keep at it and keep at it and keep at it. And as you said, use common sense.
Right.
Then you can excel at this work. And having a designation behind your name doesn't really improve your chances of getting work as much as having a good referral from a lawyer you've done good work for.
Well, from my standpoint, here's the other issue. In a federal case, I actually testified as an expert. I was recognized by a federal judge as an expert in investigations. And so I'm thinking to myself, I've got a federal judge, and I did it again in state court. And in state court, I also testified as an expert in cell towers. And so I look at these letters, and the woman that I'm referring to, when I spoke to her, I looked at her reports, and I looked at some of the work that she did, and I thought it was, frankly, substandard. And so I sit there and I think to myself, I've been appointed or acknowledged or recognized, I don't know which word works, by the federal court and by the state court as an expert. So why would I need these people, or why would I even want these people to step in and say, oh, okay, now we're going to acknowledge you as a certified defense investigator? I mean, again, I personally don't get it, but I have testified again in I think it was 2 or even 3 federal trials where the judge, asked my qualifications. I explained what I did, how long and how many and whatever. And so I think that's more significant. But you're right. Nobody's ever asked me if, other than when I'm testifying or doing cell tower stuff, nobody has ever asked me at all, do you have any kind of certifications?
Right. Well, hey, thanks so much for putting on the show, and thanks for having Brian on as guest. He's a fantastic guy, and we really appreciate you doing the show. It's good stuff.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I appreciate your calling in. Brian, if we can get you to call back, hopefully you're out there. And we're going to take a break. Again, the call-in number, if anybody has questions, 818-850-7784. You're listening to Scott Ross, All Things P.I., and we'll be right back. Thanks.
NBC Talk Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM.
Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you always tired and worn out? Is it affecting your work and personal life? Well, South Pacific Sleep Lab can help you out. South Pacific Sleep Lab provides a personal study of your sleep patterns. With their trained specialists, they will diagnose your sleep habits and will give you a prognosis for getting a great relaxing night of sleep. South Pacific Sleep Lab has locations throughout Southern California, including Fontana, and will provide transportation to any of their locations at no cost to you. To find out more, give them a call at 844-SAD-5050. That's 844-SAD-5050. South Pacific Sleep Lab, Start resting easy and sleeping sound today.
Hi, my name is Phil Grandy, philsgang.com. Most people would love to be in the stock market, but they're scared not being in. They're scared about not getting out in time. Well, that is over because now you can join Phil's Gang and my stock video program and follow me with specific stock on the video, and you will be out in time.
Find out more at philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG. That's 877-600-4264. Why pay thousands of dollars for a weekend seminar when for only $39.95 a month, philsgang.com provides all the daily market investing information you need to make profits in the stock market. With over 40 years of investing experience, only Phil Grandy and the philsgang.com team provide daily live investing webinars, up-to-the-minute market updates, all the investing educational videos you can imagine. Don't hesitate to learn, invest, and make profits. Go to philsgang.com or call 877-600-GANG, 877-600-4264.
Okay, we're back. Brian, you back with us again?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, so that was Hal Humphreys out of Tennessee who called in. I hope you had a chance to hear what he had to say. I
did. I describe Hal as the most interesting man in Nashville, and he's a good dude.
I've never been to Nashville. I've been to, I was at the other side. I was in Memphis, but I've never been out to Nashville. Actually, I have a friend who's a private investigator in Nashville, Denise Ward. Denise, if you're out there, give us a call. But she used to work with Pelicano. That was one of the things, again, that we had discussed. And, Pelicano used to put out these assignments and not tell people what they were doing or working on, so that when they went out and did something incredibly stupid, they had no idea what they were doing. I admire the fact that he sort of protected his, and I don't know if what would be the word, operators, agents, investigators, that he protected them to some degree by doing that. And, again, one of the things, part of our other conversation was I don't want to, people do things differently, and I appreciate and have a lot of associations with a lot of different investigators. I have computer people, I have camera people, I have audio people, I have, polygraph. And you develop this relationship with these people, and the only thing that I've ever told anybody not to do is stay away from somebody like Pelicano, who encourages and sort of promotes this criminal behavior. Terry Christensen, who was prosecuted and ultimately, I think, went to prison, lost his license, from following advice from Pelicano. But, whatever, I'm not going to get into him. So, and you had said the same thing, that you work with different investigators and everybody sort of has their expertise. And that's why, again, our relationship and Hal's relationship with you is because of your expertise.
Yeah, I mean, this in the investigative world is filled with a lot of solo operators out there, and there's tons of people that are just absolutely phenomenal at what they do, and there's a lot of niches in this business. And, obviously location is obviously always a big deal as well. So like if I need to interview somebody out in California or in Tennessee or Idaho or whatever, I know who to call and know who the local sort of expert is in that particular area, but also knowing experts who are experts in their field in criminal defense or audio or surveillance or whatever the case may be. And I think it's just an absolutely critical thing, and for investigators out there to, make friends with as many people as you possibly can. And, when I first got into this business, you read all these books and all this stuff, and, people talk and, well, who are your competitors and how are you going to beat them and all this stuff. And it's not something that I've ever focused on or ever really cared about. As far as I'm concerned, everybody out there I try to be friends with everybody out there, because this is just an incessant world, small little world. And that sort of attitude, has done a lot for me, and it's absolutely critical to, be friendly with as many people as you can, because you never know how it's going to come back to you, whether it's work, whether it's referrals, whether it's, or just having somebody who has a shoulder to cry on, so to speak, as far as, just talking things through. Both you and I have worked together, worked solo for a long time. And sometimes it's really good to get somebody else's 2 cents on something, and a differing opinion. So it's something that I think is absolutely critical to being in this business. And if you were going to be out there and be the lone wolf, I don't know how long you're going to survive.
Well, and a lot of clients can't afford to send you gallivanting across the country to do these things on your own as well. Let me ask you, what's your opinion, or what do you think about these organizations? There's an organization here called CALI, California Association of Licensed Investigators. I am not a member. I'm sort of a Groucho Marx. Any club that would have me as a member, I wouldn't join. But what's your thought or your position on these organizations?
So that's a real tough one. I'm not a member of our local organization either. The way I viewed it, and I'm sure this is somebody's going to give me heck over this, is that it's always been sort of an old boys club, and there's the population that is part of these kind of focuses on certain types of cases that I don't really get work on, and it's just a bunch of guys who are former police officers who get together and want to have all this stuff, and I've been to some of these things. They've never really appealed to me. I don't feel like I'm really learning anything out of them. I kind of created my own sort of social group and social network of people who are like-minded people who are, who do the kind of stuff that I do. So, listen, I think it's important to be involved. It's just not the route that I've taken. I don't think there's anything inherently bad about them. And the continuing education part and learning from other people is obviously absolutely critical. So I've done that in other ways. And, I think that to me is the networking part and the continuing education part, I think, is what you can really get out of these organizations. I've just chosen to do it a different way.
And I agree with you. And you mentioned police officers. One of the things that I find interesting is that in Los Angeles and around here, there are a lot of investigators that were not police officers, and they have a pretty high success rate. Again, I work with another investigator locally named Adam Dawson. Adam was a reporter for a very long time with local newspapers. I forget the name of the paper. And he ultimately turned private investigator. Eric Leonard, who's a reporter, turned private investigator. All of these people who are not police officers seem to be much better and more proficient at doing their job. People like yourself, people like me, we were not police officers prior to this job. Mm-hmm. And because we were not police officers prior to, again, I don't know. I don't think that being a police officer really makes you a better investigator. It may give you a little more experience in certain areas, but I don't think it makes you any better. And that's why some of these organizations I don't join, because you're right. It's just a bunch of guys sitting around telling a bunch of stories about when they were, when they were on the department and they did this and they did that. And, I'm not impressed that somebody was a police officer before. Again, I think getting rid of that mental state of the criminal arena, if you were arrested, you're probably guilty, the brotherhood thing.
Yeah, I think it's very different coming from that world. The best investigators I've ever seen are investigative reporters or kind of grew up in this business. I totally agree with you. I think I've had conversations with plenty of law enforcement officers who find the transition difficult. And in part because, as an investigator, one of the biggest things that has made me successful has nothing to do with my investigative skills, is that you have to run a business.
Right.
And you're not, you are no longer,
hey, Brian,
have a bat.
Brian,
yeah,
Brian, I'm going to have you back on because we were apparently done. Sorry, my fault.
All right.
I'll thank
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050